All right, so I have, agendas for everybody. We'll start there.
Thank you.
Yep. So one of the things you asked for, Denise, which I was going to put on the list anyway, was kind of going over the professional development that we had. So we had 2 days of professional development, November 4th and 5th, where students were off and teachers were here all day. Teachers cycled through several presentations and some learning opportunities where they did some work and created some units. So one of the days, they were split pretty much by grade levels. We had the elementary and then we had the middle school, high school group, although there was some crossover depending on what they were doing. One day was dedicated to personalized learning. So they had a whole half day of actual kind of instruction. So we had our consultant from the ESC, Jake Miller, come in, and he worked with Chris Bassage and Rich Schmidt. Chris is obviously, the principal at Lamouth, and Rich is one of our coaches, instructional coaches. And they did a presentation to teachers, gave them some directive, and then they went off and worked on a unit. So, and then they had the rest of the day, that day, to work on the unit and lessons incorporating the personalized learning techniques that they had learned. Okay? And then the other day was a rotation through 3 different presentations, coming back to some things that we have, themes that we have started at the beginning of the year. So we did the MTSS, which is the multi-tiered systems of support, which is talking about interventions for students, looking at how does that look, because it looks, different at the elementary, middle school, and high school. Middle school's really rolling well with their process. Elementary's always been good, because that's what elementary, has been pretty solid. And then working on how do we get that started at the high school, that process of going back and reteaching when kids don't understand. So they did that. They had a presentation on behavior. We're really working on de-escalation and how to set up your classroom, how to work with students and make sure that they don't get to a level where things are out of control. Do you know what I mean? So they worked on that, got some techniques and some strategies they could use in a classroom. And then we did a session on AI. And this was a group of teachers that had gone through some training from the state. That was more of, I called it an unconference, where they presented some different sites to show teachers how to help them do their jobs more effectively. So that was the third one they had cycled through. We used here and we used Riverview, which worked out really nice. So one day when they did those 3 sessions, they were over at Riverview. We were able to cycle them through the cafeteria, the gym, and then we used the tech room. And then over here we used the auditorium and the cafeteria and the media center. So, but we have to divide and conquer because we don't have space to do all 250 of them in one location. So it was a good 2 days, really good 2 days. And then yesterday we met with administrators. We had our monthly admin meeting, and we went through some different things that we're going to track to make sure that teachers are following through on some things, some follow-up, that kind of thing. So that was our follow-up with administration.
Okay. Now, did you get to talk about the reading program and how?
Oh, they did. Oh, that's right. I forgot. K2 was on, they did not do the personalized learning day.
Okay.
They actually went to Parkside all day with Abby Hartman, and they spent all day. They talked about good, bad, and ugly, you know what I mean, in the morning, and then they did in the afternoon, they talked about personalization with wit and wisdom. So they did do some of the personalized learning. It wasn't exactly the same, but they did spend the whole day over there. We also managed to squeeze in about 45 minutes of a panel discussion with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers that are piloting. And we had the whole 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade language arts group together. And they were talking about benefits, you know what I mean, the downside to benchmark and to wit and wisdom for 3rd through 5th grade. So we did manage to squeeze that in. I think we're narrowing down the direction that we want to go. There's a couple of things that we still want to look at, but I think within the next month to 6 weeks, we will be, for sure by the end of, or the beginning of January, I think we'll be able to make a recommendation.
Okay, so with the K2, were they able to obviously the pluses, the minuses, what's working, what's not, able to come to a consensus on tweaking certain things that they're doing, or are we staying with?
They're kind of staying right
Okay.
now. We're not, because
Okay.
then they started that personalization piece, you
Right.
know what I mean? And so that's where they started to dive into how can we start to work this a little bit more. So we're still not doing a lot of deviating, because they
Okay.
still,
That's what I wanted.
but Abby said she was really happy. Everybody seems to be on pace, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? Everybody's done a really good job, so those K2 teachers have really been doing a lot to stay with the fidelity of the program.
Okay, and at one point there, I think you had mentioned that some additional planning time was needed, but,
Yes, we
Yeah,
did give them some,
okay.
and we're breaking
Okay.
that up, and that has to be outside of the PD days, because there's just not
Right.
enough time in 2 days, so we're working on that too. They have gotten some of that, some of it will go through December.
okay. And then how were the students receiving the program? I mean, are they,
It's hard,
Yeah.
like we talked about, do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? We don't have a good data point, but when we do our second map, that'll give us a good indication of where we're at, I think,
Okay.
you know what I mean, and kind of, compared to years past.
Mhm.
So it'll be interesting to look at that second, and they will give that in January.
right?
They'll give the second
Okay.
round map.
Yeah, I just wondered because, I mean, it does take a deep dive into a certain topic, let's just say Western expansion.
Yep,
And then, you know, it's like, what I heard from one just touring, and it was a very informal comment, but, you know, it's easy with the kids who, you know, are kind of average above, but some of our lower ones were losing. And I want to make sure they're not lost.
I don't know if that's a fair statement, so
Yeah,
that
it
was,
may
you know what
not
I
be.
mean, it's
It
so.
could, it was very initial,
Yes,
very
yeah,
initial
so I
when we
think
just
that-
started.
And sometimes we have to raise that bar up to bring
Yeah.
everybody up, do you know what I
You're
mean?
right.
We don't, one of our strengths at Riverside is, if you look at our scores, is bringing that lower group, you know what I mean,
Mhm,
bringing
right.
them up. So I think that we will stay strong in that area. Where
Mhm.
we needed to improve was the rigor for our
Mhm.
average student to upper end student.
Okay.
So hopefully
sounds
we'll
good.
see some progress there.
Yeah, it takes time to adjust to anything.
It does, but they're doing a really good job.
Yeah,
I'm really
that's
happy,
great.
and so is Abby, because she's been working very closely with them, Abby Harmon, so,
Okay, great,
okay.
perfect.
One of the things, so the second thing is middle school, CTE alignment. So we've been working with Auburn Career Center. The state has, expanded its funding for electives that hit students between 7th and 10th grade if those electives align with Auburn Career Center programming.
Okay,
Okay, so we've had a couple of meetings with Auburn. One of the things that has to happen is all of the teachers have to have what's called a middle school CTE validation, which is like a supplement to their certificate.
Mhm.
They did that, so I had every elective teacher in the district do that certification. So that
Okay.
anywhere down the road, if because we never know who's gonna teach what, and they are talking about pushing this down into 4th grade and possibly expanding up. So I wanted every teacher to have that, so every teacher got their CTE middle school validation.
so what was involved in that?
It was an online course through the state.
Just
that
a
you-
course?
Yeah, that you go through, and then you get your certificate at the end.
Okay,
So-
all right, sounds good.
So they got that, but what is happening is, so we have been able to align some of our electives already align with Auburn
Mhm.
programming. So we will get, it's not a ton of money, but we will get some
Mhm.
funding for, like, let's say our 8th grade tech
Okay,
class, for our Riverside Ready class, that's career exploration, a lot, you know what I mean, that automatically aligns. So we went through all the middle school and the high school electives to see what existed. We'll get those aligned this year, and then we'll start to think about, for next year, how do we want to maybe retool some of our electives so that they better align with Auburn programming. And it's just an alignment, do you know what I mean? So it can be a semester class, it can be a trimester class. We don't have to teach them, we don't have to teach them a skill, and we don't necessarily have to get them a credential. It just has to be leading into a potential program at Auburn.
okay.
So it's pretty awesome though, so it'll be nice to get that funding.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear, like even the school innovation quits at 8th grade. So, you know.
Quits, what do you?
Well, in other words, stops programming at 8th grade, correct? They're done at 8th, right?
There.
Yeah, so the question becomes, you know, how do we continue down that road? And especially dropping it down to 7th, and if it continues. But this is a way to be creative, you've done it before.
Exactly, you know, I
Okay.
like that. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we're working on that, working closely with
Okay.
Auburn Career Center on that. Business advisory committees, Lori will probably cover this in her update, but it's kind of curriculum related, so I wanted to give you guys a heads up too. So we're working on making the business advisory more of a working group organization rather than just meet where we tell them about what we're doing here at Riverside. So we formed 4 groups, 3 are more directly curriculum related. I didn't put portrait of a beaver on here because I didn't, Lori will probably talk about that, I think. But we're working on some new career-focused programming. One of the committees is a 5th grade focus. So that'll be something that we do for all 5th graders focused on the 13 career pathways. We're working on something for 9th grade called the Future Forward Fair. And that'll be helping 9th graders think about a pathway, but then looking at what does Riverside offer to help me get to that pathway. So that's kind of why we're targeting the 9th grade.
Okay,
Rather than what you think of like a typical college and career fair that you do in 11th or 12th grade, we want to back them up a little bit and have them look at like our career electives and things like that that they can take care. And then we're also working on a 12th grade, which would be a senior capstone project. So we're talking about pushing those career electives that we have into 11th grade and letting 11th graders take them, and then you would have the option your senior year of doing this capstone elective class, which would be more career focused, where you'd be out maybe doing an internship, you know what I mean, some of those kinds of things.
Right.
So those are the 3 working groups that we developed. I'm really excited. We already had some really great ideas. Bill brought some good ideas to the table. He was in the 5th grade group, so I have some meetings set up already. So it's pretty exciting to see that work go
Good.
forward.
all right, sounds great.
A lot of this is career focused. That's just where we are right now. We're kind of in between, you know what I mean? Typical curriculum, and you know what I mean? Like, we're not making any changes right now. So these are, met with the city of Painesville. We're gonna continue that partnership. This will be our 3rd year that we have worked with the city, and that is our career-based intervention class that Mr. Miller teaches. The city will take, this year they're willing to take 3 to 4, maybe even up to 5 students. And in that partnership, the kids go out, and I will tell you, I can't say enough fabulous things about working with Doug Lewis in the city of Painesville. They have been fantastic. We are also looking at the township to start the same kind of partnership, but they're a little bit more difficult because it's a township and they're not as centralized. You know what I mean? With there, but we take the kids over, they do an orientation, and then we take them around. They go 2 days a week in the afternoon, and for the first 4 or 5 weeks, they go to 5 or 6 different departments. So we get them a taste of what's out there. And then they have to make a commitment to one of those departments, and then they stay there and work with that department for another 6 weeks. So it's about a 10 to 12 week
Right.
program, but they get to see, one of our focuses was the idea that look at all the options and opportunities just within the city of Painesville, kind of like we do with UH, when
Right.
we take the kids over for the healthcare class. Look at all, you don't have to be a doctor or nurse with the city of Painesville, you don't have to be in government, you can
Right.
be, you know, in the road department. We had a student who actually got to go over when they were redoing Bank Street last year, and
Oh,
see
yeah.
some of that with the city engineers, which was super cool. So a wide range of options,
That's
and pretty eye-opening for the kids, so it's
Yeah.
kind of fun to see
As
that.
far as any expansion on that, what about the county? Because they have their workers too, and they're here.
Oh, I
there,
hadn't
here,
thought
there.
about that. We can
Only because I
certainly-
work for the
yeah.
county. I see those guys all the time, and
Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
option, yep,
Okay.
I will absolutely mark that down and see.
yeah, and I always
look into-
confuse them with the city, because like, who's doing the Christmas lights? Who's
Yeah,
planting?
yeah.
It's like a horticultural thing. I mean, they do a great job
Yes.
of maintaining the park and the grounds, and so, but just something to consider if you need
Yeah.
more
That's a good idea,
opportunities.
I never actually thought about that one, so that's good.
Okay,
And then that kind of brings me to the end of what I had. It was more of a report out this
Okay,
this
and the only other thing under business advisory, and I know we mentioned this a little bit, but we don't know what Lakeland Community College is doing and their facilities, there's a lot of room over there, what kind of partnerships. We talked a little bit about
That's
that.
not really a business advisory scope, they're more local businesses.
Yeah,
We
okay.
do not have a representative from Lakeland on there.
Yeah,
Uh,
but aside from that, just how, you know, Lakeland could become a future, you know, either site or resource or something.
So they're already connected with our welding program. We take
Yeah.
our kids out there all the time
Right.
for that.
Okay,
We do take them out, I think sixth grade goes out there in their career exploration, and I know they go out there at some point at the high school level.
okay,
The one issue is the distance.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
when we were taking the welding students out there on a more regular basis, now they really go maybe every other Friday, or, you know what I mean? It's
It's a hike.
transportation,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
That is an issue, but
Right.
I will absolutely keep my ear to the ground and, you know what I mean?
right,
To see what's going on there and what potential.
We do look to partner with them when we can. Like,
Mhm.
right now, we're bringing someone in from Lakeland to teach her CCP English,
right,
because not everybody's credentialed, so when we need it,
you do partner
when the
that way.
desire for a course to run is there, and
Mhm.
we will work with Lakeland and bring somebody in.
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking in terms of their facility, but then maybe it's older kids who are able to drive, you know, when you mentioned Capstone, I mean, there may be some things, cause they have nursing there, they have a lot of things there.
Yes, to make
Yeah.
sure, and I want to get them involved, like, in that Future Forward Fair and anything we do with
Okay, good,
older students,
good.
yes. We
Okay.
will make sure that's always, and we also try to get some kind of 4-year,
Mhm.
you know, whether it's Lake Erie or someone around, just, you gotta know your options. Somebody from Auburn, come over and talk about the adult programming.
Right,
You know, you need to know what all your options are so you can make a better informed decision,
okay,
so.
all right, sounds great.
You're up.
All
You're
right.
up.
So I
You
really,
gotta talk for 37 minutes.
that's not possible. Because I was just going to say, I only really have two brief special education updates. The first was the IDA monitoring review, and I don't think Denise, you were on the board at the time that we actually got selected and went through the Ohio IDEA monitoring review process. It was in the spring, March of 2023. We were actually notified the year before, in 2022, so gives you a little bit of an idea of how long we've been going through this process. We
Mhm.
spent most of 22, 23 preparing
Right,
once we got the notification in the spring of the year prior. So it really has been a lengthy process, but what I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is that on October 28th, we received our clearance letter. I do have them. I have them one for Denise and one for Dennis.
Okay.
It's not framed.
It's not framed because
But
there's
that's
still
an
a phase 2. So while we are
Thank
very
you.
happy to get
Wow.
this letter, that we have been basically cleared through the first phase of the process, and that was primarily compliance related,
mhm,
which ties into my next topic that we'll get to in a second here. But what I wanted everybody to know is that we were cleared through that process. We are entering into phase 2. We're in kind of discussions about what that's going to look like, but that is mainly a self-monitoring process.
okay, so.
And we already have an internal monitoring team in place, district-wide, a district team.
Mhm,
We have had that even before we were selected to be reviewed.
right,
So it's basically the way that we monitor our own compliance, and now we have some more specifics in terms of what they're looking for, what their expectations are, and we've implemented those expectations into our district internal monitoring team process.
okay, are there any other districts around that have done this?
Interestingly enough, there were no other districts that have been selected in Lake County.
Wow,
There is supposed to be a rubric of sorts
mhm,
that we're supposed to be informed about why we were selected. We never received that information.
Things get a little fuzzy, don't they?
Well, the one thing they did say is that sometimes length of time. And I've been in the current position as the director for 15 years, and
Yeah.
we have never gone through that process. So
Okay.
while they never confirmed that, that's kind of what I suspected.
Okay.
But I'm not aware of any other districts in Lake County that have recently or within the last probably 5 years gone through that process as well. Now, there may be somebody this year because I don't know that.
Right.
But when we were selected, we were the only district in Lake County.
Okay, so that makes the audits look short, right?
Doesn't change our audit at all, so.
No, but what I'm saying in comparison.
Oh, about two and a
Like
half
the time.
year process.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
also more.
I feel like you're not gonna get Gary or Mike
You're not
to
gonna get-
agree to
no,
let
you're not
any
gonna
kind of
get-
short.
The auditors have a set deadline where ODE just does whatever they do, so the audits have to be done by a certain date by law, so
Yeah.
they come in and they hit us hard at once and try to get
Right.
as much done as possible.
I will say,
Oh, boy.
when we got notified, it was very stressful for a lot of individuals, including myself.
Mhm.
Just the unknown and what they're gonna be looking at, et cetera. So we did celebrate at our last internal monitoring team, which just happened to be the week that we got the clearance letter.
Good.
So we celebrated
Well,
and, yes, and
congratulations.
we're getting the word out district-wide that
Mhm.
we have made it through that process. So
Okay.
hopefully they won't be back for a while.
Right. Did you want to speak specifically at the board meeting about this? Rather than me recap, I mean, I don't want
Oh,
to put you on the
I-
spot, but,
That's up to you. I mean, basically, there's not much more to say than, other
Yeah.
than it's really phase one that we've been cleared through. That
Right.
it is a multi-step process.
Right.
So that's, I mean, I'm okay if you want to just say that,
Okay.
you know, the process began in March of 2023, and we received our official clearance through phase one in October 28th of 2024.
How many phases are there?
2, the self-monitoring phase is
Yes.
the second phase. So, again, like I said, we're kind of in discussions about what that phase is gonna look like.
So there's no definite timing on that second phase?
The phase one, there is. Everything has to be done within a year's time. So what happened was, we were reviewed in March of 2023. Because we had a new superintendent coming on board, we delayed getting those findings because it just made more sense to have Dr. Rutino on board when we got the findings to kind of, it's a district-wide process. I don't know if, I'm sure Gary remembers, because we had to have this district team, and it comprised of central office administrators, you know, building level individuals, administrators, staff. It was it was a large group that they wanted to be involved because of all the specifics. I mean, what I'll get into next in terms of our annual rating, a lot of this hinges on if we're not compliant, we could potentially lose funding.
mhm.
So there are implications from that standpoint. So that's why it's a pretty involved process.
Yep.
That's about all I can say about it. I'm glad it's almost over.
Right.
I'm glad we
Get
made
it.
it through phase one.
That's a long haul.
So then I do have, Dr. Rutino, my next topic was the special education annual rating. And I do have a couple extra copies of that if you would like.
This is the great, fantastic.
This is the one that Dr. Rutino, we actually got this the day of, we received this report the day of the board meeting. So I didn't really know until I saw the presentation that Dr. Rutino included the results on his report.
Real time.
In real time, right. It was like hot off the press. And this is an annual report. There's two types of reports we receive from the Department of Education. One is a special education profile, and that's kind of broken into chunks as well. This is an annual rating that comes out once a year. And this annual rating, they're always working kind of behind schedule, so the data they pulled from this happened to be for the 24 annual rating was from 22-23 school year, which was the year that we were reviewed. So from a compliance standpoint, Dr. Rutino had already mentioned our overall rating was a 4. A 4 is the highest rating you can receive. And I wanted you to kind of see what is included. I just wanted to kind of mention the indicators because those are what were being reviewed. This is what they're pulling data for from a compliance standpoint. So there were 7 compliance indicators and 2 results indicators. The results indicators were new this school year. They were not on the previous year's rating, but we did receive a 4 on that rating as well, but they did not include the 2 performance on results indicators. So it starts with 9 and 10 because the first indicator they did not rate this year. So 9 and 10 was disproportionality or disproportionate representation and identification for special ed. And then what's I thought you might find interesting to note is it tells you what the target is right next to that subheading, and then it tells you what our result was. So they're looking for us, for example, to be less than or equal to 2.5, and we were less than or equal to 2.5. So we got a 4 point. And then timely initial evaluations, that's indicator 11. That's did we complete all of our initial evaluations in the 60-day required timeline. They pulled, if you look right below the target, it says they pulled a total of 56 documents, and we were 100% compliant. So we received a 4 on that as well. Then early childhood transition from Part C to Part B. Denise, you'll be familiar with this from a preschool standpoint. This is early childhood coming into school age preschool, because the public school district takes over at age 3. And that is also, the target is 100% compliance, and they pulled 18 documents and we were 100% compliant, so we received a 4. Then secondary transition has to do with our students that are 16 years and older. Again, you have to be 100% compliant, and they pulled 148 documents and we were 100% compliant, so we got a 4 on that as well. And then the timely correction of non-compliance, that's actually related to our monitoring review process, and we were able to correct findings within the year timeline that was given. So we were 100% compliant, so we received a 4 on that as well. And then valid and reliable data. This has to do with data reporting errors. We did not have any data reporting errors during this time period, so we received a 4 on that as well. And then we had no significant audit findings, so we received a 4 on that as well. Then the 2 new performance indicators, they were graduation and dropout, and I did a little bit hold my breath on this because students with disabilities, sometimes that's one of the struggles is graduating and higher dropout risk. And so you could see that the target was 64% for graduation, that's indicator 1 or greater. And I was very pleased, not that there's not room for improvement, there is.
That's awesome.
I'd like to see 100%,
Yeah,
but we were at
that's good.
84.62%, which was, like I said, I was very pleased with that, but we do have room for improvement, and I think we put a lot of things in place, even the last 2 years since this data was pulled, in terms of helping to boost that rating. We're now looping our intervention specialists. We're doing some things specific at the high school in terms of our counselors at the senior level, working with students to make sure that they're on track for graduation. So all of those things I think will help to even increase that percentage rate even higher.
So what about students who get like additional years past?
It's always with your 4-year cohort.
Okay.
So if you didn't graduate with your 4-year cohort in the time frame that you should, we do get dinged for that technically, but there's nothing we can do about that. Those students they're allowed to stay until age 22. If they have needs that still need to be worked on from a special education standpoint, many of them will meet credit requirements but still have work to do from a vocational standpoint.
Right.
And the goal is to be competitively employed, or to go on to post-secondary or into a vocational program of sorts. So unfortunately that's the way the law is, and there's not much we can do about changing
It
that.
just doesn't seem like they make an attempt to align it.
So I will tell
you
you, there's been so much concern just from district and at the state level. I do think they're taking that into consideration. I'm hearing that there's talks and discussion about what to do about that, so maybe there'll be some changes coming down the road.
It might be pushed more because of like workforce and things like that. We're trying to make them productive, and enter into
Exactly.
something.
One of the things, and I had talked to Dr. Rotino, I'd like to highlight is, at one of our board meetings is our RAVE program, which is the vocational program. It's a community-based vocational program that we have for our students that have more severe disabilities, but they're out in the community working and gaining experience. And we've had success in many of those students are obtaining jobs once they graduate,
Okay.
based on some of the sites that they've been on. So that's one of the things that I would like to target at some point throughout the year, to have Natalie Urbis is the intervention specialist that kind of is in charge of our program. And it's been, oh my gosh, probably 9 or 10 years now we've had that program. So that's one of the things that I think it would be helpful just to kind of see and highlight in terms of some of the things we're doing to help our students with disabilities obtain employment.
Okay. I know you're highlighting each building, like usually, so if you could fit that in the schedule, that'd be great.
We can try.
Yeah, okay.
How many of those students don't achieve it in the timeframe that is, that they're requiring, and then?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head. We could
It's
certainly
not
get it
that
from
they
year
don't
to year.
achieve
You mean don't
graduation
graduate
requirements.
with
They
a
meet
four-
their graduation requirements, it's the
Right.
IEP team decides that they
Right.
will be better served to meet their
They
goals.
still need to stay
Yes.
for
So
a
they
while.
stay on
Yes.
for
Yeah.
other issues, but they have met all the requirements for graduation. But as soon as they graduate, their services stop, so they elect not to graduate and continue with vocational services.
I'm just curious how many and for how many
It
years?
changes from year to year,
Yeah.
but we could certainly get maybe, from a 4 or 5 year standpoint, see what that exact number has been from year to year.
It's not a very high number
It's
though.
not a very
No.
high number.
Because it's
Which-
usually our most intense students, you know what I mean, that
Right.
need that
We
support.
actually
Yeah.
thought years ago, probably this is going back maybe, it was just before COVID, so I want to say maybe 6 years ago, we thought that might be impacting our overall graduation rate. So we actually worked with the ESC, we pulled the data to look at that, and that was such a small impact. It was not what was impacting our overall graduation rate, because it's such a small number of students from year to year.
Okay, what was the name of the program again?
RAVE.
Rave?
And then the last target is the last indicator is the dropout. So the number of students with disabilities that actually dropped out prior to graduating, and the target there is 16% or less, and we came in at 10.26. So we met that, received a 4, but again, there's room there for improvement as well.
Now, when they drop out, do they go to another school or just out into the world?
So it depends. When students unenroll, if they enroll in another school, they don't count for a dropout, they go to a different school.
Right,
If
exactly.
when they hit 18, at that point, they can actually just say, they can withdraw from school, and
Right.
that's considered a dropout. So they're not going into anything else, they would go into the workforce or something like that. At under 18, we try to encourage them to go to a different academic setting as much as we can. There are some who refuse to come and they become truancy issues and
Right.
and all that, but at 18, if they just, if they hit 18 and they just stop coming, we are actually required to withdraw them as well. So we try to reach out to them, but if we can't get a hold of them.
We try really hard to track
We-
them down.
And one of the things I think we do up here really, really well is we do reach out to those kids, try to form relationships with them and try to continue to get them to get across the finish line to meet that final goal.
Have you found any common thread in their reasoning to drop out?
Varies from student to student. Again, many students that have a disability, academics is not necessarily their strength, so
Mhm.
they struggle. Some are more successful, just like we've had some who want to work, and they go out there and they get a job, and we try to work with them. We've done all kinds of counselors up here, our intervention specialists. We get really, Melissa, I remember you had one in your office. We were
Yeah,
trying to
doing
get you
work.
graduated.
I was like, well, you're going to sit here and do this work so that you're walking that stage in June. That's not an option.
We pull out all the stuff, so
Yeah,
knocking
okay.
on, we had an administrator up here, knocking on
Yeah.
a door. I mean, it's really, we really do, I mean, so we try everything we can to help students.
And it's
obtain
just like a typical student though, I would, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when they get to that
Yeah.
point, they're so disengaged from school,
Right.
you know, to try to get them back in, but we have tried some
Mhm.
pretty creative, crazy things to get them, all of them, you know what I mean? Not just students with
Right,
disabilities,
right.
but the whole, if you fall under that umbrella of we're worried about you not making it across the stage, then we are pulling together and doing everything we can that last year for you.
Good. Well, great team effort.
Right?
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you,
Very nice, Cheryl.
thank you.
All right.
I didn't make 37-minute time.
You did not. You talked much longer than I thought you were going to.
You did, though.
Me too.
That's
Me too.
You did a nice job. All right, well, then we're done.
Okay.